Where'd he go now?
It's not here.
Hello, everybody. We're back here from one side to the other with Kristoff N. Chester. Gonna just give a minute for people to pile in here. The stuff was acting, the software and things were kind of acting weird today. Hopefully there's no problems, because I remember last week, the chat kept like disconnecting. Excellent connection. Da 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 da. No one is here yet, but that's okay.
Oh. Hi, Dad. Hey, Tara.
Here we go. Making a liar out of me, aren't you? Hello, Mr. Bishop. Hi, Tara. Yeah, I'm gonna give a couple minutes here, because actually, before we get into the meat and potatoes of what I was planning tonight, weird ass birds out here in the desert.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, I'm really hoping Connie will be here, because she brought up something really interesting at the end of last week. Unfortunately, because of the chat and how it was effing up, I didn't actually see the message that she put up until like we were already ending the show, and I feel kind of bad about that. And I'm really, really hoping that she's here, because I wasn't ignoring you, Connie. I didn't see you. Hi, Dad. Yeah, hopefully the chat doesn't act weird tonight. It would, though, because, one, Jesus is missing. Two, the bishop's not feeling well over there in the corner.
Yeah.
And, again, everything seemed to be kind of weird.
Hi, Chester Roach. You're here.
I said hi! Yeesh. So sensitive. But no, we're going to be talking more about the American Civil War because, well, actually, we spent a lot of time on the hot sauces last week.
Hi, Tina. We did.
By the way, real quick, I just want to say this. If you are one of the nearly 100 people that have subscribed to us in the past week, welcome to the channel. So not only do we post original horror stories, I also ramble incoherently in front of a camera and a microphone, pretending to be out in the middle of the desert, surrounded by undead creatures with the aid of a bishop and a Mexican who is not here right now. And there's a chirping bird for some reason. I don't know. Brace for weird and odd. In positive and bad ways, I'll admit it. I remember when we first started doing From One Side to the Other, every episode there would either be a couple of new subscriptions or we would lose a couple subscriptions. And I would always sit there and wonder, was it something I said?
No problem.
I just think it's kind of funny that, last week, I will argue I did not ramble. I did not go into a rant. I just, on a couple of occasions, mentioned my personal opinions about Abraham Lincoln, one of the most beloved and popular American presidents, and how I actually think, what did I say? He was in the gutter. As far as my opinion of him goes, he was in the gutter. And somehow he found a way to dig past bedrock and find an even worse human being in Lieutenant General Sherman. Which, by the way, we're going to be bringing up. Oh, dear. So, according to my to the road sign here, Jesus will not be here tonight. He's off in Loveland learning about frogs.
What? They say it was.
Yeah, Mr. Bishop, I agree with you. I would like to think that this recent humongous spike we've been having is partly people coming back. But I'm sure there's people who think I'm absolute trash for talking, but either way.
Well, we got a big spike in the story.
Yeah,
The
no.
story
People.
we released the last night.
Oh, yeah, people are loving the last night. Which is funny because before the last night, our most successful story was The Legacy. The Legacy was a world-building, establishing story.
I like that.
The Last Night is also kind of a world-building, establishing story. Do y'all just like those kind of stories? Is that what I should be posting more of? See, just to pile drive that, the third most successful video on our channel actually is Dollar Jack. which was a lot of fun to work on.
That was a good one. I like Dolly Jack.
Yeah, I still think your performance at the end as Jack is one of the best things on the channel, sincerely.
Oh, thank you.
I loved your work, and we need to get you behind the microphone and have you playing more characters again.
Oh boy.
And Jesus. People, that's the weird thing. The episodes that Jesus has been in playing Oscar, Operation Sandbar, is not our most popular. But I have had people specifically say that they liked the guy on the radio. Or the guy on the intercom.
Which is Oscar.
Oscar, yeah.
Oh, he had so much fun playing that character.
He did.
You guys were sitting at the table, and
I
I was
rem-
sitting at the computer, and he really enjoyed that.
He
I wish he
did.
was here to talk about it, but
Yeah, well,
a little.
maybe we can talk about it like on Christmas or something. Because apparently next week is Christmas. I think. No, isn't next week?
No, we have 2 weeks.
We have 2 weeks before Christmas.
Next week is the 18th, and then...
Okay, so we have some time. We have a bit of time. Cool. Maybe next week we can talk more about the Vagrancy Horror. Because why the hell not? It's my channel. Anyway, though.
Solar Stones?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my mom mentions Operation Sandbar as her favorite.
Yeah.
To be fair, Mom, I think that there might be some bias. So for those who don't know, Operation Sandbar is actually very loosely inspired by my grandfather's military career and some of the stories that he and my great-uncle Paul told me about Vietnam. I'll let you draw your own conclusions about where his stories ended and mine began, but that's what that is. And also, for the new people here who might be checking out the stream, yes, actually, the image that we used for the last night was actually my mom's property back in Alabama that I just, played around with basically with some photoshopping. It wasn't even Photoshop, actually. It was some other software. But anyway, maybe we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah, you use GIMP.
Or something. Yeah, my mother would know him as Uncle Harry. He was my great uncle. But anyway, there she is, Connie. I am so glad you're here, Connie. So now that Connie's here, we can address this. So Connie brought up something really interesting, actually, and unfortunately, I did not see the comment until literally I was saying goodnight for the show. So, Connie, I wasn't ignoring you, and actually I want to address that real quick. So, to be fair, and I know maybe last week we may have given some good-natured ribbing to our Union friends.
Yankees.
Yank rolled over and dug through bedrock to find Sherman. But anyway, to be fair, truth be told, both sides, the Confederacy and the Union, did want to prevent the Civil War. Both sides proposed options and scenarios. Now, Lincoln, one of his ideas was, how do I put this? It was kind of like a bailout, but not a bailout. Basically, he proposed $10 million, which would be distributed to all slave owners in the United States, which, by the way, that was less than 7% of the population. It's funny, we talk about slavery in America like it was this humongous thing, and actually it wasn't. There were only maybe a few hundred at the absolute most people who actually did own any slaves. Now, to be fair, most slave owners had several. Entire families actually would be technically considered property. And basically, Lincoln proposed $10 million, which would be distributed. Essentially, he wanted the federal government to buy the slaves. And then he was going to, and this is kind of a loaded word, but I really don't know how else to describe it. He wanted to buy them and then deport them to Africa. And the Confederacy didn't like this for several reasons. What's sad is that the number one reason they came up to say no to it was purely political. And then they accidentally realized that there were some bad things about Lincoln's proposal. But basically, because again, remember, the Confederacy hung on one quintessential aspect, that they were the moral guys. That the federal government were the oppressive, aggressive. What's the expression? War of Northern Aggression is what they called it.
Yeah, the War of Northern Aggression.
Yeah, that's a Southern expression. Everyone's just saying hi to each other. Anyway.
Hello, everyone.
And so they basically, the Confederacy, which technically wasn't the Confederacy yet, they hadn't officially declared civil war. They were afraid that if Lincoln was the one who proposed the solution, quote unquote, to slavery, it would look better for the Union, and the Union, or the federal government, would look like the moral good guys. And unfortunately, the Southerners, they really couldn't have that, politically speaking. What's funny is that was their core reason for turning it down and saying no to it. They stumbled upon a couple of actual good reasons to oppose it. And I know that sounds really weird to say, but hear me out before you start lighting torches. So, number one, $10 million to buy all the slaves doesn't end slavery. You're just changing who has the slaves. Which, again, isn't that the whole point of this whole thing? You know what I mean? It didn't actually address slavery. Secondly, you want to deport them all back to the African continent. Well, here's the thing. One, what about Irish slaves? Most people don't realize this, but like a good chunk, I want to say over a quarter, over 25% of slaves in America weren't African. They were Irish and Chinese. There were Chinese slaves. No one ever talks about them, but yeah.
Yeah, Irish and Chinese.
So what are you going to do? You're going to send a Chinese slave to Africa? What is he going to do there? You know, or an Irishman. Another problem was, and this is going to sound really cruel and really evil, but again, hold on a second.
Hey, Jesus.
Oh, hi, Jesus. Here's the thing. So a lot of slaves were actually like families, and it wasn't unusual for slaves to get married and have kids. Okay, my 2 slaves had a kid. What do we do with the kid? He was born here in America. Are we going to deport him to Africa too? Why? He has no ties to Africa. He's American. Is he American? And that's the problem is, you can't say the answer because Lincoln's proposal, his $10 million idea, didn't address this. It didn't abolish slavery. It didn't redefine it. It was literally just, we'll buy your slaves and boot them off the continent. You know what I mean? And what kind of annoys me is that the Confederacy was this close. They had 2 other really good reasons, actually, to question the $10 million proposal, and they didn't. Hey, look, I'm not on anyone's side. I'm going to call the balls and strikes as they come. The Confederacy turned down the $10 million idea because they didn't want to give that feather for Lincoln's cap, so to speak. That's why the Confederacy turned down the $10 million proposal.
Just like the government today.
Yeah.
If Lincoln were alive right now, he'd be rolling over in his grave.
I hope they can hear you.
What? Just quoting the president.
Yeah, but that is the $10 million proposal. It was turned down for political reasons, and ironically, later they found problems with it. Fun side note, the Confederacy proposed their own version of the Emancipation Proclamation, in fact. They proposed abolishing slavery. Mainly because the truth of the matter is, and I'm going to burst some bubbles here, don't tell anyone who rules over Mordor, because slaves are actually very counterproductive. You have to keep them alive, you have to keep them in line. It really is a complicated process, especially when you consider that there were technological advancements being made right then and there, such as the cotton gin. Honestly, the South really didn't care about slaves. The thing they cared about was they didn't want the federal government to be the ones to end it and look good. And of course, the federal government had the exact same opinion, because when the Confederacy proposed the idea to emancipate all the slaves, they were like, we can't do that. I mean, shit. Remember last week when we talked about that wonderful historical quote from Lieutenant General Sherman about the
Yeah.
he wouldn't even call them people. He called them a species. He called them, what did he call them? The Negro species.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even call them people. He wouldn't even call them Americans or anything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sherman is a freaking splinter in my finger. I don't like him. I try to not take sides. I try to be completely impartial and just tell the stories and tell the information. No, this time I'm going to say it. Fuck Sherman. Except for the guy who made the tanks. He was kind of cool. What? He was...
Different Sherman, I think.
Yeah, that was a different Sherman. That was World War One?
No,
The Sherman
that was
tanks?
two.
That was two? You know, we probably are going to need to talk about him at some point. That'd be kind of cool.
You know, that's a good point. What is the
Who made the Sherman tank? That was World War... That was one of the World Wars.
It's two.
I remember my mom had a dog who was huge, and she named him Sherman after the tanks. Anyway, though.
There it is.
Uh,
Oh.
oh.
The M4 Sherman tank was named after American Civil War General William Tecumseh Sherman.
Oh, not the same guy.
Isn't that Sherman?
Was it? Was he William? Lieutenant General Sherman?
Yeah.
Don't tell me that the coolest tank ever made was named after the worst frickin' U.S. general of all time.
Yeah, it was William Tecumseh Sherman, I'm pretty sure.
Damn. Yeah, Will. His name was... Damn. Mr. Bishop is... Yeah, it was World War II. The Sherman tank is named after that a-hole? Really?
Apparently.
That sucks.
That does suck.
You know what else sucks?
Oh well.
Oh, excuse me. Sherman was my little brother Sean's dog. Not my mother's. Oh, yeah. Jesus didn't come because we didn't have any food. You know what's funny is actually he's correct. We didn't order any dinner or anything. That's right. Yeah, he was a little half Great Pyrenees. Anyway, though. But yeah, no. Both sides made various proposals to try and prevent the war, and basically the other side would always just say no because they didn't want, you know, the other guy to have a win. Which, boy, howdy, doesn't that just sum up war? Like 90% of war is just people who aren't willing to stop.
Oh yeah, he admits it. It's because we don't have food.
Yeah, no, he said that.
Oh, fine, Jesus.
But anyhow, speaking of people who have horrible reputations,
We have burritos.
we do have Doritos. We also have Mexican soda, Mexican Coke, which is really freaking good. But anyway, speaking of people with horrible reputations, we're gonna jump right into this now. You okay over there?
Yeah.
We're both not feeling too great. We kind of ate some bad food, but the bishop is really going through it right now.
I'm okay.
I hope you are. Anyhow, though, so last week we were talking about various people. This is another one that I wanted to mention because I actually learned about this guy only recently, which is weird because he sounds really important, actually. And I got $5 that my dad and your dad are gonna know exactly who I'm talking about, and I'll bet you they're gonna have different opinions.
This is the guy you told me about that I don't even know about.
Yeah, Dad, you're completely right. It was nothing about slavery. The whole thing about slavery is something that they started saying after the war. I don't know if I would say it was about food specifically, Dad, but it was a thing. That was part of it. Anyway, though, Uh, again, I bet you nobody but our dads is going to know who this guy is. Benjamin Butler, the Beast of Nolans. And yes, for the record, I do say it that way just specifically to annoy you, Sean.
Wherever Sean's been the last.
Yeah, where is he? He hasn't chimed in tonight. But anyway, so Benjamin was a senator, and eventually I believe he was a governor. Was he a gov? Hold on here, I'm trying to see my notes. I don't know if he was technically considered a governor or not, but he was a senator, and then he actually became a representative. Food wars are the best war. It was state right. I knew they would butt heads, but anyway. Yeah, Sean might be actually asleep apparently, but anyway. Also, real quick, Bishop, I'm gonna send you a picture. If you want to put this up.
You really need to do this before the show.
I know. I thought about it. But, yeah, if you could... Can we get that real quick?
Oh, this age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get this.
This horrifying man. Okay, yeah, he was a governor. He did manage to become a governor, actually. But
it's actually not so bad to get him
Yeah.
in throne.
But, anyway, so this guy... Really? There he is. Okay, real quick, folks. Help me out here. Does he or does he not look like a Halloween mask from Spirit? Don't look at me like that. I'm telling you the truth. Look at him. He has no eyes. There's just darkness behind his lids. He looks like a hollowed out rubber mask. Which is fitting because, again, he was known as the Beast. He was considered actually really cruel and monstrous during the Civil War. Right up Sherman's alley.
He was Confederate, right?
Butler? No, he was Union.
He was okay.
So his big mark on history, outside of holding dozens of political offices, he was actually really controversial. So for starters, he was a Democrat. Keep in mind, the Democrats were majoritarily Confederates. So he was kind of, what would we call him today? A maverick, a breakaway.
Lincoln's vice president was a Democrat.
Well, yeah, because back then the runner-up was the VP, wasn't it?
I think that was how it still worked.
Back by then? Because the whole thing about picking the VP is actually relatively recent, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I say relatively recent. It could be like 50 years ago, but I don't know.
I want to say Lincoln liked him and
Butler?
his VP.
Johnson, his VP.
Yeah, who became president.
Fun side note, Butler was part of the movement to impeach Jackson. He did not like... Yeah, he was a Democrat, but he didn't like Democrats.
Yeah, Andrew Johnson got impeached, but he wasn't removed.
Yeah.
I think is how it was.
I think, I don't think the impeachment was successful. This is something our dads will be able to correct. But anyway.
Yeah, impeachment has to be through the House and the Senate has to do it.
Yeah, it's not as easy as people think.
It's basically just paperwork.
It's not as simple and cut and dry. Yeah. But anyway, he was very famous for being a politician, and a lot of people claimed that he basically schmoozed and friendshipped his way into actually being a general. In fact, he was a major general. That was his official rank. Would that make him higher than Sherman? Because Sherman was a lieutenant general.
Depends on how much he smoked, man.
I'm not sure, actually. Is lieutenant higher than a major?
I'm assuming Sherman was a higher ranking general, but I actually don't know that.
I'm not sure either, but either way, he was really controversial because everyone said he was a career politician, and they basically gave him the military rank because he was so embedded in the political machine and the engine horribly corrupt, supposedly, and there were tons of stories about him being very inappropriate with women. It's funny because everyone thinks that he is known as the Beast because of the Civil War. No, they were calling him a beast well before then, because apparently he did not know how to take no for an answer, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. Yeah, he was not popular. And apparently he hated his own party. He hated the Democrats. Which makes me wonder then, wouldn't that make him a Republican? Just saying. But,
No?
you have something.
So a lieutenant general outranks a major general.
Okay, so he was not higher than Sherman.
But a major outranks a lieutenant in general. But a lieutenant general outranks a major general.
Okay.
But if you're just a lieutenant or a major outranks... A normal major outranks a lieutenant.
But it switches when they're generals.
Yes. According to this that I found.
Mr. Bishop isn't holding back here, saying he bought his rank. He bought it. Yeah, that's a possibility. Really? It was Lincoln and Johnson that founded the RNC and the DNC? I did not know that.
I mean, Lincoln was the first Republican elected, I believe. Yeah, Lincoln was the first, because the Republican Party... Because there was, like, Democratic Republicans before that, but they were different than Republicans.
Yeah, there were a whole bunch of different things. Yeah, no, it was kind of scattered. There were lots of little parties. It's kind of like today, except instead of two all-powerful parties and a bunch of little tiny things that are basically just parts of the bigger parties, back then it was much more strongly divided.
They had the Whigs and the Federalists, but I think those both faded out by the time of the Civil War.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure how
politics worked back then. But anyway.
There were the anti-Federalists, the Federalists, the Whigs.
The Whigs.
The Democratic Republicans, the Democrats, the Republicans.
Yeah, no, there were lots of little factions. But anyhow, back to my point. He was very unpopular. A lot of people said he was just a rich, nasty man. And he was basically given the city of New Orleans. After its occupation by the Union Army, they put him in to oversee it. And yeah, it did not go well. If you were from the city naturally, let's put it that way. He was known for not being kind. He enforced curfew. He had people arrested. He proposed, and this was shot down by Lincoln, so I'll give Lincoln points to this. He actually proposed that former Confederate states should exclusively pay taxes. All the other states in the Union shouldn't have to pay taxes at all. Everything should be paid by the Confederates because they were conquered. And that was his logic. And Lincoln was like, well, that's just going to make him frickin' rebel again. What are you thinking, you dumbass?
Is that how it was? Okay.
The government couldn't be separated. Yeah. You know, I will sum up this. Because people sit there and talk about that like, you know, you're such a fence setter, Kristoff. You know, you try to be, you know, you have no opinion because you're afraid of offending people. No. You want my political opinion? I agree with George Washington.
I like Washington.
He thought there shouldn't be political parties at all. Just remember, he was like, yeah, no, you guys are all going to get along. Was he the one who actually... No, who was it? The founding father that, like, straight up was like, I want a pistol duel. Who was that? Was that Jefferson?
That was Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton.
Hamilton, thank you.
Those are the two who actually... Burr killed Hamilton?
I think. But the point is like, they were like, no, we need to be united on this, and if you really, really can't get on board, then we'll just go outside and handle this with flintlocks.
Now, Jackson had a couple duels.
I mean, they all did. I'm saying with each other.
I want to say Jackson clubbed the guy with the butt of the pistol because neither of their pistols went off. I could be wrong on that.
I remember that, but I can't remember who was involved. But I know that I know that story about the both of their guns malfunctioned, and so they were like, "Screw it!" They just hit each other.
Burr shot Hamilton and killed him in a duel.
See, I thought Burr was the one that was killed.
No, I believe it was Hamilton. Let's see.
But I remember that but yeah, no, it was anyway. But no, that's my opinion. I think the idea of the I don't like parties at all. I think you should be loyal to, America, to your country, not necessarily to a faction.
Died of gunshot wound.
See, my dad is saying Hancock. John Hancock thought that everything should be settled in duels.
There are a lot of people who thought that, from what I understand. But
my problem with that is, that's pretty damn, permanent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Burr shot and wounded Hamilton, and he died of his wounds. Yeah, duels were a thing, and there was like a gentlemanly thing.
Yeah, there were actual rules. You use the same kind of gun.
You fire over the person's head.
You're not supposed
to actually hit them.
The idea, it's kind of like playing chicken.
Yeah.
You're playing on the idea that someone is going to back down and get, too scared for it.
Yeah, it was kind of like I guess, pardon the term, just a macho contest.
Yeah, it was chicken. It was chicken with bullets. Well, not bullets. They used balls.
Every once in a while,
unfortunately.
I understand, Hamilton and Burr did not like each other.
Oh, a lot of them didn't like each other.
And Burr just shot him.
But anyway, no. Back to actually what I was talking about. The Beast, Benjamin Butler. He was a lot like Sherman, actually. See, Sherman believed that the only way for the Civil War to truly end was to grind it down to such a pulp that nothing could ever oppose the federal government again. Again, until Lincoln was shot, Sherman was all for completely destroying the Confederate States. Benjamin thought that since their conquered land, quote unquote, which, by the way, all of America is conquered land.
I think your dad means John Hancock was one who thought it should be Republican-Democrat? Or was he talking about the duel? Early video game. Oh, yeah, my dad, early video game, just something to do.
Yeah.
Because nowadays we just shoot each other in the video games.
Yeah. Fortnite. Yeah. But anyway. No, Benjamin adopted the idea that the Confederacy had to be made an example of. And one of his most controversial ideas, and this goes back to the Confederacy wanted to abolish slavery. They were completely fine with it, and they wanted to be the ones that said it first. But our boy Butler here, he had an idea. So, basically, he declared that, how do I say this nicely? Because he kind of screwed up in his legislation. Yeah, there he is, the freaky looking mother. Anyway, he declared that black people were contraband of war. And so he owned them now. You'll notice the phrasing I used. Because either through malice or sheer stupidity, his decree, his writing, didn't say slaves were contraband and therefore property of the federal government. He said Negroes, black people, all of them. There's a point where you have to wonder, is it malice or stupidity? You know what I mean? It's like, could he have been just that dumb?
Yeah.
Could he have been that evil? Because I see both directions here. Um, but no, he was not a cool dude. And again, it's kind of funny. He's kind of like Sherman in a lot of ways. Nobody liked him. Politicians didn't like him because he gave them a bad name. Soldiers didn't like him because he wasn't really a veteran. Well, he was, but he wasn't, if that makes sense. You know, the public didn't like him because he supposedly had a horrible, brutish history. And he was a complete bully and, you know, leveraged everything against the city of New Orleans. And then he went on to become a governor of, what was it? Where was he a governor? I had it here a minute ago. Massachusetts? I think it was Massachusetts. He went home to Massachusetts and became governor, if I'm not mistaken.
Sherman admitted the only way he beat Lee was he had to cheat. Well, I would say there's no cheating in fighting usually. So,
see, I actually have to agree with my dad there, because again, Sherman was famous for his brutality, his cruelty, and a lot of people, because again, most people don't realize this, the Civil War, most people didn't want it. Like, even the people fighting didn't want it.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of sad because it was really an important time in Americans' history, and nobody fucking knows it correctly now. It has been so romanticized and demonized that, yeah, no, most people, you say anything about this, and they'll look at you like you've grown a second head, and they're like, what? I never heard of that. It blew my mind that there were people who didn't know about Lieutenant General Sherman, for example. Or Stonewall. People don't know about Stonewall. And speaking of him, I actually wanted to talk about him a little bit too. And for the record, no, I'm not going to pick on the Union guys and just talk praise about the Confederacy. So, Stonewall Jackson, and I noticed your dad, Mr. Bishop, was wanting to talk about Stonewall. So real quick, do you think he took the nickname Stonewall because his actual name is freaking Thomas? The most seriously, what was Ken taken or something? Like, I'm serious. He has the most generic name. His nickname sounds awesome, and then you find out his real name, and it's like, oh,
Thomas Jonathan Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah. Aside from Stonewall Jackson, his first and middle name sound like the name a game gives your character when you're making them.
Did somebody named Thomas wrong you?
That's like, this is the most generic name. That's the long name of Tom. The only more generic white name you can have is Ken. In my opinion. And yet, he is one of the most legendary generals in American history. And by the way, he's not here, but I'm going to say the line anyway. There's a conspiracy afoot. Because everyone has it wrong about how Jackson died. The common story, and they tell this in school, I learned this in school, was that Stonewall Jackson was shot and killed by his own men. That is not true. He was shot. He did get shot by his men in 1863? Yeah, 1863. Because he did die a few days later, but it was from an unrelated thing. He died from pneumonia. And of course, some people say that it was pneumonia caused by the... No. Getting shot in the arm will not put liquid in your lungs. It had nothing to do with it. He did not die from the wounds. I always thought it was weird that he was shot and they amputated his arm. Was he shot in the arm? Because I couldn't find where he would, like, specifically where he was hit.
Yeah, I thought he was shot several times, like in the chest and everything. But
I'm not sure, because the thing that the information I found on him was that he was shot, and it resulted in the amputation of his arm. And again, everyone tells the story wrong that he was killed by his own men. No, it was unrelated. He was known for having incredibly strict discipline among his men. He was very fond of fortifications, which I think is hilarious. I don't know if he ever actually engaged Sherman in battle. Now that I think about it. Yeah, my mom brings a good point. It's funny. It's kind of a slinky effect. They talked about the Civil War and they hyped up all this misinformation about the Confederacy and the Union, and now they don't want to talk about it. The hell is that? I hope that doesn't get picked up. There's a car alarm going off. But anyway.
Well, back in the day, from what I understand, the Confederacy was praised like everywhere. And now it's the opposite way. The Union's praised.
Yeah, but now in the immediacy, no one wants to talk about it anymore. And I can't help but notice that now when we're in the age of the internet where everything can be looked up like that, suddenly the federal government doesn't think it needs to talk about the Civil War anymore. Those public schools, they got better things to talk about, right?
Oh, yeah.
See, here's the secret, though. Here's the secret that everyone gets wrong. The Civil War wasn't about good or evil. It was just tragic. And again, everybody and their ugly sister tried to stop it from happening. But unfortunately, politics just would not be stopped. You had two profoundly stubborn forces. And I still argue that Lincoln was kind of the gasoline on the fire here. He was not a good negotiator. He was not a good diplomat. Everyone makes joke about him having a head like the Frankenstein monster, and it makes sense. He was hard-headed as shit.
Yeah, he was pretty stubborn.
I'm amazed that the bullet got through. That was a bit of a low blow. Fine, I'll admit that.
That one was mean. Like I said, I give Lincoln credit for not wanting to punish the South too bad at the end. I mean, yeah, there was Reconstruction, but that was mostly Grant.
I was going to say, that was after Reconstruction and Reconciliation happened after the assassination, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was more Jackson.
Johnson.
Johnson.
After Johnson, it was Grant, I think.
I'm terrible at remembering the lineage of presidencies. I'm sure one of our dads can tell us. Was it?
I think it was Grant, and then it was the guy that was really controversial. I don't know. I shouldn't talk about it since I don't 100% know exactly, but yeah.
Well, I mean, what? Is their ghost going to come in here and be offended?
I don't know.
Why are there... These are my dogs. This is Famine and Gluttony. They're my doggos. But anyway.
We do a horror show.
Yeah, we're a horror channel, dude. By the way, welcome. Anyway, though, back to my point. No, Jackson was... see, that's the thing, is a lot of people argue over if he was actually, like, the military force of the Confederacy. He wasn't the president of the Confederacy. That was Lee?
No, Lee was the general.
Who was the president?
Jefferson Davis was the president.
Davis, thank you. Davis was the president. Again, a lot of people argue and kind of bicker about who was the best one, Lee or Stonewall. I mean, both were fairly successful, actually. A lot of people joke that Jackson was too good for his own good because it was the strict discipline that he incorporated with his soldiers that made them shoot him. Because, yeah, he moved past the line. Yeah, the railroads weren't complete yet. It was, yeah, no. Hell, a lot of the western states weren't even states back then. They were territories, or they weren't part of America yet.
Yeah, a lot of them were territories.
Territories, which is a state but not a state. Yeah, Lee... Oh, Mr. Bishop has an opinion. Lee was the best one. Then it was Jackson. But no, and like I said, I always kind of wondered, did Jackson and Sherman ever fight? I mean, obviously not like one on one. I mean, but like, were they ever in opposing in battles together against each other?
Look it up.
Because they were absolute opposites. Stonewall Jackson was known for being a brilliant defensive guy, and he would fortify things and put up walls and stuff. Part of his name. Holy crap, everyone, I don't mean to alarm you, but our dads actually are agreeing on something.
Yes, during the American Civil War, Sherman and Stonewall Jackson did face each other in battle.
Huh.
Most notably during the Battle of Jackson, Mississippi in May 1863, where Sherman's Union forces captured the city while Jackson was defending it under the command of Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston. However, they never directly engaged each other on the battlefield, as Jackson was not present during the main fighting due to his earlier death at Chancellorsville.
Huh.
So apparently
So
that was a longer battle?
They did fight. They did fight, but they were not personal. They never personally engaged each other. Well, as I was saying though, they were kind of the opposites. Jackson preferred to, shell up and basically hide behind his walls and make you come to him, and Sherman was just like, you can walk over the dead.
Who was the only general who never lost a battle in the Civil War? According to this, George Henry Thomas. He fought for the Union Army, United States. I'm not familiar with him.
Really, he was undefeated in,
During the
and yet
Civil
you
War,
don't hear about him. And you don't hear about him. Now watch, it's like some kind of loophole thing where like he was in 2 battles or something.
It doesn't list the battles here. I mean, I could go more into it. I just thought that was cool.
Kind of like how in 1999 Vince McMahon bragged that he was undefeated because he had never been in a match.
Oh.
In WWF. Because he became, real quick aside, he became a wrestler and entered the Royal Rumble, won the Royal Rumble, and for months bragged about being undefeated. He was never in a regular match.
Yay, Vince McMahon!
Well, we're talking about horrible people here, so why the hell not? Anyway, no, Jackson is kind of cool. At the same time, there isn't like too much to talk about him. He wasn't that old. He was only 39, and really, he really didn't do a whole lot other than be a military guy. He was in numerous battles, obviously. But no, he there's not a lot to talk about aside from his various battles. It's kind of funny because, again, a lot of Union guys are accused of buying their ranks and getting in from schooling. To be completely fair, that's how Jackson did it. He graduated from the United States Military Academy and received his appointment from that graduation. Fun side note, he was originally from Virginia until the war. And then the part he was born in became West Virginia. So does that count as cursed? For the uninitiated, by the way, West Virginia is cursed. Stay out of West Virginia. Everything weird and bad seems to happen in that area.
So many cryptids, monsters, aliens.
That's probably where he is.
That's probably where Jesus is. Speaking of Jesus, are you still in the chat?
Yeah, my dad brings a good point. Actually, it was very rare for officers, especially in American history. Officers almost never are actually on the battlefield, which I think is kind of funny because last week we were talking about how Sherman is praised by those who like him as being the first modern general, which is to say he never fought. He was always far away from where the fighting was, shouting orders down a line. And actually, I was thinking about that because, the first thing when you talk about these generals and officers and stuff like that in these wars is, you think of the obvious question: what would happen if they battled someone else? What would uh, what would it look like if Stonewall Jackson went to war with Genghis Khan or something? Honestly, it wouldn't end the way you think, because on one side you have a general who leads from the back from a command center, and we talk about these older generals like Vlad Tepes, Richard the Lionheart, and Genghis Khan and stuff like that. Those guys, yeah, they fought. That's how they became famous. They became well known because of the fact that they actually were there. Julius Caesar was famous for wearing a red cape in battle, which, by the way, I've heard people argue that Superman's red cape is actually a reference to Julius Caesar's red cape. I've also heard people say that it's red because the American colors. But anyway, that's another topic we should talk about sometime. Superman.
That'd be cool.
But anyway, and yeah, I hate to burst people's bubble, but yeah, a battle between great generals from like ancient history and recent history would not go the way you think it would. Because one of two things would happen. A, it would be fought like the Civil War and modern warfare, and the general would be nowhere near the fighting. Or B, you would have to take the modern general and put him in sword reach of the old general, and that would not be pretty. It would be funny. It'd be hilarious, but it would not go well. Virginia Military Institute, which was like the West Point of the South. Yeah, okay. Patton. I remember Patton. We haven't talked about Patton. Patton was this. Yeah, that's a good mentality to have. That'd be interesting. Patton against like Sherman or Stonewall. Controversial opinion. I think Patton would take it. But it's hard to say with modern generals, because again, you're talking about guys who gave orders. What's the expression? Generals lead war, but soldiers win war, because obviously they're the ones who actually do the hard part. But anyway, no. Yeah, there's oddly not a lot here about Stonewall. But the thing I wanted to talk about specifically was his death, because again, I personally feel, and you can call me crazy if you want, I feel it's an intentional conspiracy to make him sound dumb and silly. Because again, this legendary defensive tactician died being shot by his own men. It sounds... What's the word I'm looking for? What am I looking for? It sounds almost comedic to me. And that's BS. And by the way, that's literally what I was taught in public school, was that he was shot and killed by his men. But no, he died, I think it was, yeah, okay. It was about a week after he had been shot. 8 days specifically, in fact. And they amputated his arm, according to the stuff I found here. And yeah, he got pneumonia, which is liquid in the lungs. So, no. The gunshot, honestly, probably hadn't... Well, okay. I'll be fair here. Being shot probably didn't help his health. This might be shocking to some people, but it probably actually wasn't the best thing in the world that he endured. Yeah. But no, it was not the gunshot wounds. It was pneumonia. And what's really sad is that he went completely out of his mind in his final hours. In fact, actually, I have his last words here. Here we go. These were the last words of Stonewall Jackson. Order A.P. Hill to prepare for action. Pass the infantry to the front rapidly. Tell Major Hawks. It says here that he paused and just stared off into space for a minute before suddenly starting a whole new sentence. Let us cross the river and rest under the shade of trees. And then he died. But no, those were his last words. He was belligerent and was talking as if he was giving orders and instructions. Which, real quick, maybe my dad or Mr. Bishop knows. What is he referring to with A.P. Hill? That doesn't sound familiar. I'm not familiar with A.P. Hill. What was he talking about A.P. Hill to get ready for action? But anyhow, an interesting little side note too about his death. The only reason we know that he was shot by his own men is because he was actually hit with bullets. We mentioned this last week, but yeah, the Confederacy were the ones using bullets. The Northerners, the Union, they were still using the old tiny cannonballs, basically. My dad doesn't know either. My dad doesn't know what A.P. Hill is referring to either. See, that's weird because it sounds like a place. So was that like a formation? Was that where there were soldiers maybe? I'm assuming that's what it was, but... Oh, Mr. Bishop thinks that Jackson would have beaten Patton. I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not super familiar with Patton, other than I know the name and I know a little bit about him, but yeah. No, there's this weird conspiracy about Stonewall that he was shot and killed by his own men. But, interestingly, Jackson is also really the first example we have of forensic ballistic investigations. Because they, discovered that there were actually bullets in his arm. So, yeah, weird little side note. The first example of forensics, ballistic forensics, I should say, in America was Stonewall. Because they identified that he had to have been hit by Confederate soldiers because Northerners didn't use bullets. At least not the kind of bullet that, we're talking about. I mean, I guess technically speaking, those little balls were bullets. Yeah. But no, kind of a weird distinction there. That's one of those things, it's like it's a record or a trophy that you don't want to win. I was the first example of forensics ballistic investigations. Which is a whole other thing we could talk about sometime, too. But no. See, I'm still I'm dragging it out because I want to see if maybe Mr. Bishop or my dad know what A.P. Hill was referring to. Oh, A.P. Hill was a person? A.P. Hill refers to second in command. Oh, so that was like his right-hand guy, A.P. Hill. What a weird name. What the hell is it with Civil War guys and weird names, now that I think about it? But anyway, I wanted to get that off my chest because that's one of the things that's really bugged me. Because again, I'm not on anyone's side. I'm just telling the history. And that is really difficult because people have this really bad habit of not telling the truth about the Civil War. Well, I guess I should say the American Civil War, because lots of countries have had civil wars. Pretty much everybody's had a civil war at one point or another. Has Canada? No, has there been a Canadian Civil War?
Not really, no.
Um, yeah, no. I mean, every place has had civil wars of some kind. Um, anyhow, though, but yeah, no. And again, it annoys me because, look, the Civil War was a long bloody time ago. Quiet you. It was a long time ago. At this point, I think we can, you know, put the pistols down and we can have sincere conversations about this. You know what I mean? It's like we there's no reason to be ignorant about this anymore. And for the record, I know I'm picking on the Union here a little bit, but to be fair, they kind of made it easy for me. I'm sorry.
They weren't perfect.
No, they weren't. But for the record,
I mean, neither was the Confederacy.
well, that's what I'm trying to say. That's the roundabout I'm getting to here. Is that, see, I grew up in California, a state that has always been more leaning towards the Union side of the coin. So I heard all kinds of stories about how Grant was a dumbass who got shot by his own men. Lee was a belligerent drunk and incestual, by the way. That's a story that I heard, that he banged his cousin.
You said Grant instead of Stonewall. But...
Well, you know what I'm... Sorry.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Ulysses S. Grant, he was a Union guy. Not really talked about too much.
No, but...
None of them really are, other than, like, Sherman and Lee.
Yeah.
But Grant became president.
Yeah. Sherman didn't. Sherman, after seeing Lincoln get shot, suddenly wasn't interested in being in the spotlight for some suspicious reason.
Lee, I think, retired. I'm assuming he was forced out of command.
But anyhow. But again, to be fair, if I had grown up in like Louisiana or Texas, I probably would have heard absolute horror stories about the Union instead of how great the Union was. And that's the thing. Union and Confederate, they were still American. And it's really sad too, because a lot of people would argue, militarily speaking, the United States was never stronger than the Civil War. You know what I mean? And it's so annoying because you get people who sit here and talk about, you know, one side was against slavery, and that wasn't even a thing. That wasn't a factor. It was never about slavery. Both sides proposed their own versions of abolishing slavery. And the only reason that we didn't get either of their proposals, well, actually there were several proposals on both sides, was because the other side didn't want them to look like they won, that they were the moral victors. Because the Confederacy didn't have military power. That was their only thing on the Union was, well, the Union are big bullies. They're the bad guys. And the federal government realized they couldn't let the Confederates have the moral high ground, because there was no fighting back against that. If everyone thinks you're a bad person, going and shooting a bunch of people isn't going to change that. People tend to not like people who shoot and fire cannons and shit like that. Yeah, there was also the food, because again, the South was mostly farmlands and the North was known for its, factories, and the northern states felt like they should, they knew how to run a farm and vice versa. The farmers thought that they knew better than the factory workers, and unfortunately, nobody was willing to compromise. Yeah, and it's ridiculous that we're still, 18? No.
Like 160 years, basically?
Yeah.
Since the end? Right off the top of my head?
Something like that.
159 years?
Yeah. Over a century later, we still can't just talk about this. We still have to propagate lies and demonizations. Huh.
Have a good night, Jesus.
Good night, Jesus. Really, AP? Are you talking about AP Hillmom? That got a name? Oh shit! Hi, Glenny. Here, you can sit here.
Dead dog.
Since Jesus isn't here, apparently. But anyway, yeah, and it's a shame because this was important. This was people suffering, and it's kind of actually is kind of creepy how people are so used to hearing their own propaganda, their one side of it, that like they actually get really touchy and kind of hostile if you if you dare to say anything other than what they heard about the Civil War decades ago. You know what I mean? It really is kind of creepy. Because again, see, I don't think there's anything not worth learning. Why would you choose to not hear more of the story? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love history. I wish I knew more. I know American history pretty well.
You know what's funny is I've spent 2 episodes talking about American history, and I would argue American history is my worst history. I could tell you way more about like the Three Kingdoms era of China, which is another topic that I think we should talk about for 2 reasons. One, the Three Kingdoms era is one of the most awesome ages, and 2, it really, really pisses off the CCP.
Yeah.
Remember, if you're pissing off the CCP, you're doing something correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Union, Confederate, we can all agree on that. I'm just waiting for somebody in the chat. It's like, that's not nice to say. That's xenophobic.
It's not anti-Chinese, it's anti-communist.
Which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just wait till they find out I would argue that the CCP is an illegitimate government and isn't Chinese at all. Anyway, who said that? Anyway.
Must be that bird.
Yeah, that bird chirping around saying weird shit. But anyway, no. Before we wrap up, there is one last story that's a little bit more in line with the Civil War. It's a little bit more in line with what we normally talk about on this channel. It's essentially a ghost story.
I know it is funny. We got a couple new people in here finding the non-horror episode, apparently.
Yeah, perfect timing.
It's like, yeah, normally we talk about the weird, strange, and paranormal, and sometimes other topics like the Civil War.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the Civil War is a strange time. And also, yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy and propaganda that rotates around this topic. And quite frankly, fuck you, it's my show.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm going to address this actually. Because for the record, I saw you in the chat, and I saw your comments, and you're welcome to think what you want about me. But I will remind you, don't insult or disrespect my other guests. Please and thank you. But I'm going to say, this channel has always been and always will be welcome to anyone who wants to be here. If you don't, for any reason, it doesn't matter why, if you don't, understand, I can't make you enjoy this. I can't make you enjoy listening to me talk. I can't make you enjoy my stories. That's on you. And if you're not enjoying it, then take some advice from a guy who's getting old. Dude, you've got better things to do than be unhappy in my chat or on my videos. Okay? Now, you're allowed to say you don't like me. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But I will counter your statement by asking you, how is your life better for throwing curses and insults at me or my guests, compared to what it was 2 hours ago? What are you actually getting out of this? How is it better for you? Because I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say it's not. Whereas, I'm fine, dude. Are you kidding? I love doing this. I love this show. I love my 12 people who are always in my chat. I don't care if half of them are related to me. I have the best fans in the entire of YouTube. So you're not bothering me, dude. And honestly, I'd hope you don't bother yourself. And again, that goes to anybody who doesn't like me or anything I say here. Or what Jesus says. It's funny because he's not here, and he's usually the one who says the horrible, insulting things. But this is, as much his show as it is mine. Really, honestly. And again, if you don't like it, okay. But anyhow, sorry, getting that out of the way. They need to make a video game about about American history so people will play it. Shit, it's not like there's plenty of frickin' space. Well, I guess, hell, wasn't there just recently a new Red Dead Redemption game?
A couple years ago, I think.
A couple years ago?
Or was there a recent one?
I think it was a remaster. But I actually liked the Red Dead games. I mean, they're historically accurate as like a Superman comic book, but they're cool, they're fun. I liked it. Sometime when we're talking about that stuff, I'll have to tell the horse story that I have. But anyhow, before we go, we have a ghost story about the Civil War. Now, the problem is that there's no names really to staple onto this story. Because, spoiler warning, nobody made it out. Yeah, no. This story actually is kind of a tall tale, I guess you could say, that they tell down in Louisiana. So, most people are familiar with the legendary Battle of Mansfield. One of the nastiest conflicts. I want to say it had one of the highest body counts. Mansfield? Didn't like it was the most bloody battle of the Civil War, or one of the most?
I know Antietam and Gettysburg.
Yeah, Gettysburg was pretty gnarly. It may have been the worst in Louisiana, I think. I'm just waiting for one of our dads to chime in because they would know. But no, this is a story from Louisiana, and again, it's kind of a tall tale. Anyway, and again, it's something that's told in like little towns in the area, because a few thousand. Ugh. I actually was there. Well, not at the Battle of Mansfield, but I went to that battlefield. I'm not that damn old. But anyway, it's funny too because I make jokes about how I'm getting old. I'm not getting gray hairs. Mine's just falling out. Jesus, who's not here, he's the one who's sprouting gray hairs.
I got a couple.
I hate you for your hair, by the way. I am mastering the frickin' solar flare technique, and you are over there like a dark-haired Fabio.
Well, thank you.
Really? Mr. Bishop doesn't remember the Battle of Mansfield.
It's like northwestern Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But anyway, point is that this story, again, it's kind of a ghost story. It's kind of a tall tale. Basically, both the Confederate and the Union forces knew there was going to be something in this area. Both forces knew that they were kind of coming to a head. And so both forces were kind of sending out scouting parties to feel around the area. You know, it was kind of a game of blind tag, so to speak. You know what I mean? They knew there were two big armies that were going to bump into each other, and they each wanted to be the one to go first. Now, just a bit north of Mansfield. The story always is north of Mansfield, by the way. So if you're looking geography-wise, north of Mansfield. Supposedly, both Confederate and Union forces found this same small town, and the town's name changes almost every damn time. Every version of the story is a different name for the town. Some people call it say that the town is God, what was it like? Slate Lock. Some people call it Slate Lock. Yeah, it has a ton of different names. Slate Lock is the one that's coming to my mind, and I'm pretty sure that's the one I heard, so that's why I remember it. But anyhow, it was this little small nothing town, which, by the way, people take for granted how big America is. You know, everyone thinks that all of America is like Denver and New York. No, especially in places like Louisiana. There is rural countryside. Yeah, my mom remembers it. She was there with me. Anyway, and basically, again, people take for granted, no, there was such a thing as a rural small town that would have largely no interaction with other towns. Now, granted, thanks to advances in communication and travel and so on, you don't see these much anymore. But back in, what was it, 1860 something? Was the Civil War 1860s?
1861 to 1864, I believe, or 5.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
the 1860s? No, dude, it was very easy for little towns to just be by themselves.
Because Lincoln was elected in 1860, and the war started shortly after he took office in 1861.
My mom is claiming that she never had gray hairs until I was born.
April 12th, 1861 to May 26th, 1865. 4 years, 1 month, and 2 weeks.
It's sad that all that violence was crammed into like 4 years. I don't even have any kind of witty remark to say. 4 horrible, horrible years.
I mean,
but anyhow,
not to be
a downer.
political or anything, but look how long Syria's civil war lasted.
Oh God, yeah.
13 years, and within a week, the country's basically gone now.
I'm gonna make the argument gone might be a bit of a stretch, but yeah,
the government's
the
gone.
government. Okay, that I'll give you. Anyhow, though,
Not siding with
anyone, just saying that's the fact. 13 years, and it took 24 hours for its government to relocate to lovely Russia. Yeah. Anyhow, back to my story. So basically, what happened is these 2 scouting parties from each side of the war found this town of, again, I want to say it was Slate Lock, Louisiana. There's somebody who's going to be typing it up. It's like, I can't find that town. Well, dude, it's a ghost story. Again, and I mentioned there's other names that get given to this mysterious town that's north of Mansfield. Someone's going to find it and is actually there.
Not to cut you off, but there's a place in Oregon. It's supposedly called Grizzly, Oregon, and certain people will see the signs on the road that points them left, and they'll drive into the middle of nowhere.
Really?
And sometimes that road's not there and that sign's not there. And I swear I've seen that sign. It was so weird.
Really? Mr. Bishop, can you verify this? Grizzly, Oregon?
Grizzly, Oregon. It's heading Highway 26 just past Mount Hood towards the Warm Springs Indian Reservation.
But again, that goes to my point. How, before you get hung up on the name of the town, we're talking about a ghost story here. The town's not the important part. The town's name isn't even the important thing at all. There's another name that's much more important. But anyway, as I was saying, so you had scouting parties from both sides come to this small town. Now, what's weird is that the residents of this town were actually kind of annoyed at both sides. Apparently, the town was preparing for some kind of I don't want to say festival, but it was some sort of what's what I'm looking for, like a mass. There was some kind of a religious thing that they were doing in the town, and they were like, you all need to leave here. You need to leave now, and specifically, if you do stay here, you better be gone by sundown. Now, both these scouting parties, which, by the way, that had to be an awkward situation. Yeah, one's coming down one side of the street, so it's like, wait a minute. Because, I mean, they had different uniforms. They would have recognized each other. That must be really, really awkward, actually, when you think about it. But anyway, the town was like, yeah, you both of you turn around, beat it, get out. And of course, like any good soldiers, they were like, no, we we are going to be addressing this. That's an enemy scouting party. And supposedly both sides drew, well, I guess they didn't draw them because they had them already, their rifles. And I want to point this out. These guys literally just pointed their guns at each other in the road. Subtlety is the best part of any war, right? And again, the people were like, you need to leave, you're running out of time. You need to go now. You really should have been gone the first time we told you, and standing here in the road pointing guns at each other isn't going to help your situation in about 5 minutes when the sun dips down below the horizon.
A lot of people didn't want to fight, but some did. So.
Yeah, and that's the worst part about it. As bad as some people didn't want to fight, it was the opposite effect. The ones who did want to fight were absolutely out for blood.
Yeah.
Which tragically is something that happens in war.
So
and he says, yeah, your dad, Mr. Bishop says yes, that I'm assuming he means yes as in he's seen the road signs to Grizzly, Oregon.
Yeah, but I've been over that pass like several times since I heard that, specifically looking for that sign.
And you haven't seen it. But have you ever seen it?
I think I have.
You think you have? Okay, so it was like I'm assuming you're talking about like a really young memory.
A few years before I heard it, just one of those things, and the reason I paid attention to it is like, oh, grizzly bear. That's a
weird name for a town too. We're gonna have to investigate that. We're going to look into this.
And then I heard it's
now.
Yeah.
Anyway, and what's funny is that both sides are like, we are literally about to start shooting each other, and you're telling us to leave. What is so bad? What is so dangerous that we need to leave before the sun dips down below the horizon? And the people told them that the will-o'-the-wisps were coming. The will-o'-wisps were going to be here. Now, for those of you who don't know, will-o'-wisp is a southern, they are kind of southern in origin, huh? You don't hear about will-o'-wisps in like other countries. They are American, I want to say.
Yeah.
The first time I ever heard about them was in the South. But basically, they're a kind of, would you call them a ghost?
They're a ghost light. That's what I always.
The ghost, yeah. Some people call them ghost lights.
Yeah, just a floating.
Yeah, they're orbs. They're like the orbs that you hear about with ghost hunters these days. But apparently, they had to leave because will-o'-wisps were coming. So after both Union and Confederate soldiers get over laughing in their faces, because it's like, we literally, they're Irish.
Irish folklore, okay.
See, that makes sense because, again, there were lots of Irish people in the South. So it makes sense that the term would come over. But the first time I ever heard about them was in the South. But anyway. And again, both sides, it's kind of nice. We found unity. Both the Union and the Confederates were laughing at the fact that it's like, Bishop, the will-o'-wisps are going to come out when the sun dips down below the sun line. And the town explained, well, they're not the problem. The problem is Old Whitey. Don't laugh. Old Whitey. To which everyone went, the hell's Old Whitey? And the town spokesman, I guess, the person who was actually trying to stop them from fighting, was like, you know what? Nah, never mind. Stand here in the street and point your guns at each other. Yeah, you'll see in a few minutes. Old Whitey will be here. I mean, no one will see you again, but you'll see him for a couple minutes. And literally, the town went inside. Specifically, they actually went to the church because, again, apparently they were holding some kind of mass. Mass is specifically Catholic, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the point is that there was some kind of thing going on, and they were like, "You need to leave." Now, again, both sides thought this was amusing, actually, and that's the sad thing is that like these guys were ready to fight. And for one brief minute, they were kind of friends because they both thought these schmucks in town are trying to scare us away. Old Whitey? Really? Old Whitey. That sounds so dumb. Except that the sun did go down. And both scouting parties were not seen again. Now, the stories claim that Old Whitey was a dog, this ghostly hound who would appear and lead a procession of these will-o-wisps through the town. That's why everybody would go to the church, because the dog leading the will-o-wisps, basically he wouldn't go to the church. He would go down the main street, almost like he was leading a parade, kind of. And he would just, go around the church, literally go around it, and lead the will-o-wisps to a if I could talk straight, to a cemetery. By the way, cemetery is different than a graveyard. Graveyards are actually on the church property. Graveyards are hallowed ground. Or hallowed ground, I think is the term. It's pronounced hallow, isn't it? Yeah, hallowed ground.
Hallowed ground is
it's holy.
Technical. Some people say hollowed or hollowed. Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be hollow. Hollow means, empty. Yeah. A graveyard is attached to a church and is hallowed ground. A cemetery is off by itself. But what the people got so annoyed with the soldiers about was that if you were not in the safety of the church when Old Whitey led his procession, you would join the procession. He would take your soul and add it to the will-o-wisp that he leads to the cemetery. And yeah. Oh, my dad, yeah,
they're fairies.
They're more like fairies, yeah. But the will-o-wisps you hear about in the South or ghost lights or orbs are a type of spirit. And yeah, but no. In a weird way, so both scouting parties were looking for the other army. Because both sides knew they were nearby. And then these two scouts run afoul of Old Whitey, and they're not able to relay their information. So, did the Battle of Mansfield happen partly because of this supposed ghost dog and his will-o-wisp parade?
Possibly.
Also, real quick, don't deny it. You'd be looking out the window. You'd be in the safety of the church. You'd get on the hallowed ground, but you'd be like, that is so cool. I mean, it's not cool for the soldiers. They really, really should have gotten out of the street. But, it's hard to feel bad for them when they literally were laughing at them. It's like, they told you, although I'm torn because, if there is a ghost dog, well, I guess they don't say that the dog is a ghost. He just leads ghosts around. But if there's a dog who takes people's souls and you're trying to warn someone, I feel like that's where you should start.
I'm assuming the dog didn't care what side of the war they were on.
Well, no, he didn't, because none of the scouts survived. None of them reported back.
He took Johnny Reb and Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Well, maybe don't stand in the street when a ghostly dog... Can we agree on he's ghostly? He's not a ghost. Maybe he might be a ghost.
Ghostly, yeah.
Yeah, ghostly. A ghostly dog is leading parade. Get out of the goddamn street. I guarantee you anything. It was because they were like, well, we can't back off first. The other guys will need to back off first.
Political.
Yeah, the dog is literally just walking towards them like, what is wrong with you bunch of idiots? And this is the Deep South, so it was like some old Basset Bloodhound thing. No, whenever you talk about ghost dogs, everyone pictures like a husky or a German shepherd. No. This is the Deep South. I bet you money Old Whitey is a mean, grumpy, pale-ass bloodhound.
Basset hound.
Well, Basset hounds Basset hounds are really short.
They are.
Bloodhounds are the big SOBs that make you reconsider, God's place in this world. I admit I do love bloodhounds. I think they're so dopey.
I love basset hounds.
Bassets are cool until they make noise.
Oh gosh, yes.
My sister had a basset hound for like 3 weeks. She could literally make the house shake. She was a fat little bugger. I don't know if she actually, like, my sister actually bought her or was just like watching her, but we had a basset hound for a little while, and she literally would make the house shake with her barking. She had lungs on that tiny little body. But anyway, no, no. It doesn't say what old Whitey was, just that he's a dog. He's this big white dog that leads the will-o-wisps through this little town to the cemetery, but he specifically stays away from the church. So, which, by the way, we haven't talked about hellhounds on this channel yet, have we?
We've not.
We should. I like hellhounds. Would you call him? Would you say he falls in the category of a hellhound? Because the hellhounds are usually described as being black. And he is. It's in his name, Old Whitey. He's a white dog. And now that I'm thinking about it more, I know I'm thinking too much about this because again, it's a ghost story from the Civil War. I'm probably thinking more about it than anyone has ever thought about it in all of time. Have you ever seen a white bloodhound? The bishop is like, just, his mind is blown.
No, I don't think I have. I think they're all brown that I've seen.
I've only seen brown ones. I've never seen a white one. But again, it's a ghost. It's a ghostly dog from Civil War legend. It can be whatever the hell it wants to be. But no, I'm gonna stick with this. I bet you anything, if Old Whitey is real, he's a bloodhound.
No pictures are coming up except like one
albino. Yeah, but that's not.
Hi, albino buddy.
Anyway, though, I love bloodhounds. It's the face. It's the face. They're so ugly you can't help but love them. Anyway, though, we are way past time. That's a basset. We're way past time. So with Old Whitey leading his procession of will-o-wisps, we'll say goodnight to everybody. I have been your host, Kristoff N. Chester. These are my undead dogs, Famine and Gluttony. We got the bishop in the corner there.
Hi.
And that
Hello.
sounds so familiar.
Hi, guys.
Don't know why I heard that before. Anyway, though.
Hi, guys.
We'll see you all next week. And we should probably get back to the traditions of this place. Let's talk about cryptids next week.
Yeah.
We'll talk about some more cryptids and weird critters.
From more states or
Just in general. Because I remember we were going to do that. We were going to talk about a cryptid from every state. But
Good night, Chester.
I want to talk about... yeah, love you too, Dad. Good night. But no, I'm in the mood to talk about hellhounds now. Yeah, next week we're going to get biblical on your bitch asses. Talking about hellhounds and other weird canines.
Does that include werewolves?
We talked about werewolves quite extensively, if I recall, but we can always talk more. I mean, shit, I love talking. I love the sound of my own voice.
Good night, Dad.
Good night, Mr. Bishop. Always fun to see you.
With the Beast of Bray Road? We played the
He's a
Gable
dog
film.
man. That's a dog man. Anyway, though, next week, cryptid canines.
We could play the Gable film again.
I remember we actually did show that.
Yeah, we showed it in its entirety.
I have opinions about that. But anyhow, as I was saying, we'll see you next week, folks. To the 100+ new subscribers that we have suddenly.
Thank you.
Please
all.
don't judge us on this one episode. Like I said, I have to admit, there have been times I've thought maybe this was a bad idea to do these live shows. And then other times it's like, God, this is so much fucking fun. Anyway.
Check out The Last Night.
The Last Night, our newest episode up. And yeah. Keep checking the shadows.